Welcome back, everybody. You have just tuned in to the Steel City Blitz Steelers Podcast, presented by Deck Roofing of South Florida. And we are 2 weeks from the 2021 NFL Draft, and it can't get here soon enough. I can tell you that. We are ready, and everybody else is ready, and it's just that time of year. You're just prepared to see who the Steelers are going to draft. You want to see if you were even close to being right on any of these. And of course, the Steelers love nothing more than to prove all of us incredibly wrong. Joining me tonight are Ben and Ian. And gentlemen, I hope that you are well. And the most important question I have for you this evening is, of course, what are you drinking? Ben, you were telling us about a new bourbon, whiskey rather, you're doing?
Yeah, it's called Quiet Man.
Quiet Man, and it does not open with a crack like that. That would be a beer.
That would be a beer to go with the whiskey.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Irish whiskey, and it's quite tasty. If you, I got it as a gift on my birthday. The night that I apparently drunk dialed into the podcast. I did.
Oh, that's
I was
right.
dialing
I
in on
remember that.
purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I was dialing in on purpose, but I had a bad connection, so you guys couldn't hear me.
Right.
So I hung up. Anyway, yeah, it's a traditional Irish whiskey, but then they age it in bourbon barrels, and it's quite tasty. I gotta say, I'd never heard of this before, and it's really nice.
Okay. All right.
Quiet Man fits your demeanor so well.
Absolutely.
It does.
Yes.
It does. Subdued, shy, unassuming.
Two things.
Quiet.
Like peanut butter and jelly. Two things that just go together.
Especially when I drink.
Yeah. Ian, what are you enjoying this evening?
I'm drinking the Jameson that's aged in stout casks, and it is amazing.
It is terrific. You just can't go wrong with a little Jamie's pretty much any way that it's served. I got chastised before I came down to the podcast room. My wife saw that I was tipping 3 fingers of Bradshaw bourbon again, and she immediately got upset because she bought me a number of different whiskeys for Christmas, and she's like, I did all this, and I got you these, and I got you these, and I see where I rank, and I said, well, I drank like several of those. I have a couple left, and I said,
It's
really
Steelers podcast night.
Well,
though.
that she knows. She is the classic ball buster, and that's what she was doing to me. So
okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean,
well, that's good. You deserve it.
Well, this is also true. Guys, a couple of bits of news today, and 2 things I think we were all very pleased with. The Steelers announced that they had re-signed Josh Dobbs to a 1-year deal. And I'm not going to say anything. I'll just let you guys. Ben, why is that a good thing? Because we've mentioned it on the podcast several times, but why is it a good thing for Dobbs coming back?
A couple of reasons. Number one, it basically solidifies the quarterback depth chart, and they don't have a need going into the draft. That doesn't necessarily mean that they won't take a quarterback, but they probably won't now. Now, if something falls into their lap that they just didn't expect, and they don't have a choice, I would expect them to do it anyway. That's the first reason. So it gives us a better idea about where they might go in the draft, and again, it solidifies that position. They've also got a young prospect on the depth chart already who was a first-round pick last year, in Dwayne Haskins. So I don't expect them to take a quarterback at this point. I think they want to see what they can do with those guys and see what happens with this depth chart as is. The second thing, this is the bigger thing, is ever since Dobbs came back from Jacksonville, as soon as Ben Roethlisberger comes off the field, the first person he goes to see is Josh Dobbs. And the reason he's doing so is to get Dobbs' perspective on what he saw during that series. And then the two of them sit down with the Microsoft Surface, and they kind of go through the overhead, the aerials. Here's what I saw, here, and then Roethlisberger can reprocess all those plays and then go back out on the field again. And so basically Dobbs is acting as Ben's second set of eyes on game day, which is a nice thing to have. So I'm pleased all the way around.
Same here. Ian, I'll let you comment on that, and then also go ahead and comment on the return of Vince Williams today as well.
Yes. So like Ben said, Ben's often said if you could take Josh Dobbs' brain and put it in Mason Rudolph's body, you'd have close to a complete quarterback. And Dobbs is arguably one of the
dickish thing to say. I can't believe I would say that.
I can. Dobbs is, a rocket scientist. I mean, he literally has a degree in rocket science.
Yes.
So, I mean, reading defenses, understanding the mental aspect of playing quarterback. He has that absolutely down. He just doesn't necessarily have all the physical traits together to be, a successful NFL quarterback. So that being said, it's great to have a guy like that on the sidelines. I mean, I think he'd make a fantastic coach someday if he wanted to stay in football and not pursue a career in rocket science, to, be able to coach up guys. And he's basically doing that with Ben, and Ben's play, I think, is better with Dobbs on the sideline than it was without Dobbs. So I think it's a great thing overall.
Ben seems to think so. I mean, Ben seems to think there's value in going to Dobbs. So
definitely.
Yeah. And I also think that it's, it pretty much takes the need for a quarterback completely off the draft board unless you're able to trade up for a guy like Justin Fields. And then you have
don't get me excited
quarterback set as well. But that being said, the one thing I was thinking about today was, I mean, they re-signed Dobbs to a 1-year deal. They have Dwayne Haskins on a 1-year deal with, they can tender him for next year. And Rudolph's in the last year of his contract. I mean, are we keeping 4 quarterbacks on the roster this year, or is one of these guys going to be the odd man out? Because I remember a couple years ago, we were all convinced that Landry Jones was going to make the team, and then he was a kind of surprise cut at the end. I mean, is Mason Rudolph the odd guy out here?
Wouldn't hurt my feelings. Oh, did I say that out loud? That was my outside voice. Sorry.
Okay, let me take it even a stretch farther. Is there any possible way somebody trades for Mason Rudolph?
You'd have to get a deal done in the next 2 weeks, because a team isn't going to trade a 2022 draft pick for a player that they're not going to have in 2022.
I mean, if they trade Mason Rudolph, it'll be in August.
Yeah,
before the end of camp.
I was like a team that needs a QB.
A team that needs a quarterback due to injury.
Yep.
And Mason decides he needs a fresh start somewhere else. He's still playing on a cheap rookie contract.
Yeah.
And that's all you're going to get is a 6th. Maybe a conditional 5. Maybe a conditional 5 if Mason goes there and performs at a certain level and actually plays. But all you're going to get is a 6, and that's that. At least you get something.
Right.
But if that happens, when teams give up on players, basically what they seem to get back is a 6th round pick, unless you're the Carolina Panthers and you're willing to give up the farm for Sam Darnold, which is I still can't. I don't understand that.
You still seem perplexed.
I can see giving up a 2nd round pick next year for him, but not everything they gave up to get him this year. That makes no sense to me. Anyway, it is what it is. Generally speaking, the currency. Yeah, generally speaking, the currency for players that teams have given up on is a 6th round pick, and that's what you're going to see.
It's unfortunate that Marcus Mariota decided to stay in Oakland because Mike Mayock, the downside of hiring a guy who is in the media to be your GM is that his prospect rankings are out there on the internet for everyone to see.
Oh,
and if you go back and look at Mike Mayock's 2018 draft rankings, not only did he have Sam Darnold ranked as his number 1 quarterback, but he had tied for 5th Lamar Jackson and Mason Rudolph. So
yeah, Mayock liked Rudolph.
Yeah. I'm just saying, if you wanted a trade partner, that would have been a good one. But Oakland's not going to trade for a 3rd quarterback since they have both Derek Carr and Mariota.
Right. Ian, what about Vince Williams coming back? You made a good comment in our chat room today just about why not try to restructure or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little surprised he came back. I'm so glad he's back. First off, let me just say I'm thrilled to have him back. He's a great leader in the locker room. He's got the experience. He knows the defense. Even if he's only a 2-down player at this point, he will do anything asked of him. He may not, have the athleticism or speed to run with guys, but he'll go out there and give it 110% for sure. He can. He's a consummate team player, and he definitely. I mean, he even said he wanted to stay in Pittsburgh. I'm a little surprised. We talked on the show a while back about just the pride aspect of it. That if a team cuts you, you probably, going back to them kind of with your tail between your legs and saying, okay, I'll take less money to stay here is usually a little surprising. And since he was in the last year of his deal and they were going to have to eat the dead money on the cap anyways, if they wanted to keep him, I was a little surprised they didn't offer him either a pay cut or some kind of fake extension to stretch that money out, rather than just straight up cutting him like they did. Now, the other side of it is they may have cut him with the notion of, hey, we like you as a player and a person. We can't afford to pay you this much. We don't think you're worth this much this year. Why don't you go out on the market, see what you can get? Here's what we're willing to pay you this year. And if you can't find something you like, you can come back to us and we'll pay you this much. That at least gave Vince the chance to shop around rather than just offering him a straight pay cut. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't have any inside information on behind closed doors, but usually when you cut a player, sometimes you get the Steven Nelson effect where they burn the bridges on the way out, and that dude still isn't signed.
No, he's not.
So who knows what's going to happen there?
Yeah. Ben, did you see the numbers on Vince's thing? Is it just a 1 year, or I didn't see it?
I haven't seen anything on it.
1 year deal, yeah.
Yeah, I read 1 year deal, but I haven't seen terms.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's exactly what Ian just described. Basically, it's, hey, we're not willing to pay you this much money. Whatever the reasons were, maybe they were nice about it and said, hey, we think, we don't feel like we want to invest this much into this position this year, in terms of total dollars. And, it's just, you got caught in a cap game here.
Yeah. And it happens.
We're going to go ahead and we're going to release you. If you want, go out in the market and see what you can see and see what your value is, and then come back to us. And here's what, like Ian said, I mean, basically it's like, hey, we'd like to make an offer later if you don't find something attractive. And then they probably made an offer in the interim and he marinated over it. Apparently he had multiple offers, but he really wanted to come back to Pittsburgh. And he's talked about it for years. He's got enough money. He's made more than he expected to.
Oh my God. Big time.
So he's
big time.
He's done okay. I was surprised to learn that he bought himself a Lamborghini.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Apparently about a year ago. That surprised me because he's often talked about the fact that you need to save your money.
Right.
And cars do not tend to appreciate. So I don't understand why he did that, but apparently he did. But beyond that, I mean, this is a guy who, took full advantage of his opportunity. Again, just to remind the listeners, he was a compensatory 6th-round pick, came into the league, basically a 7th-round pick, didn't know if he was going to make the team, went to rookie camp, went to the mini camps, went to all the camps over the the course of the season, did as much work as he possibly could with the coaches, studied his ass off. When he was leaving Pittsburgh, they told him he couldn't take his playbook with him because they didn't know if he was going to make the team. He stole it.
That's right.
He stole his playbook so he could take it home and study it between the end of the mini camps and camp. And by the time he got into camp, he knew the defense pretty well and eventually ended up having to start games due to injury his rookie season. And really has made the most of his opportunity in the NFL. And this, I've tweeted about this a handful of times on Twitter, obviously, but basically the guys last year, I know Cam Hayward will disagree with me and I wish we could talk to him about it, but he basically has said something to the effect of, don't worry, don't let them fear you into showing up. You don't have to show up. You're not going to miss anything if you're a young guy or an undrafted free agent. Yes, you will. Okay. A guy like Vince Williams proves that notion to be false.
Yeah,
that guy worked his ass off all summer to try and make that team. And by the time camp rolled around, he was prepared and he made the team. And then he made a difference as a rookie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
These guys are not getting – last year they did not get a fair shot. They did not get a fair shake. Tyler Simmons, the wide receiver that Colbert signed at the Georgia Pro Day.
Yeah.
This year he will get a fair shake if they're able to have mini camps, if they're able to bring those guys in. And they're not even sure if they can yet because they're not sure if they've got their arms wrapped around this virus completely.
Mm-hmm.
But, getting those guys in and getting them exposure to the scheme and to the coaching and to what the coaches expect early gives those guys a big advantage in making this team.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm thrilled with Vince Williams being back and whether or not he is a depth guy doesn't matter. I'm just grateful to have him back for right now, and we'll see how things kind of unfold as the spring and the summer roll on. But he's back, and I think it's a good thing. Ian, I want to turn to the defensive side of the ball, or at least stay on the defensive side of the ball since we're talking Vince, but guys in the draft coming up, and we were talking before we started recording that this is just a really, really poor defensive line draft. And so we don't really plan to spend a lot of time there. So that's where we're going to start.
This is a really poor defensive draft in general.
It is. I didn't want to be.
I wouldn't say corners that bad. Come on.
There's a few good spots, but depth wise, it's not real good. I don't think. But anyway, look at the defensive line, Ian. We're not. I mean, the number one guy on nearly every board from that position is Christian Barmore from Alabama.
Yes.
Big dude, 6'5", 310. Okay. If he falls to 24, do you take him?
No.
I don't think so either.
No, we don't have a need there. I mean, we brought Tyson Alualu back, and that pretty much solidifies the depth chart.
Alualu.
Okay, thank you.
Phonetics.
Hey, I just said the way
Mr.
Tyson
Hooked
says
on
it.
phonics there.
Thank you, Mr. Pedantic. My children are pedantic enough.
Welcome.
Yes. So, nevertheless, we don't really have a need for a starter. That said, if Barmore is there as really the only first-round defensive tackle
pretty much
in the draft, if there's someone that wants him, you could probably shop that pick decently well to somebody looking to get ahead of, you got Jacksonville right behind us, and then Baltimore, who's had some turnover on the line, Cleveland, who needs some interior defensive linemen. So you might be able to shop that pick around a little bit and see what you can get and trade down for it if Barmore's still there. I think he's probably going to go top 20 just because of the fact he's the only one, and the drop off after him is significant. And it's crazy to think just, how a draft class changes from year to year.
Yeah.
I mean, last year there was 5 or 6 defensive tackles taken in the first round plus of the draft. Maybe it was 2 years ago. That might have been 2 years ago. Last year, I think there was only 2 or 3. But I mean, last year there was Derek Brown, there was Javon Kinlaw. There was only 2 in the first round, but it was the year before there was a whole bunch. But still, nevertheless, I mean, the last couple of years there have been some, and both of those guys I named from last year are head and shoulders better than Barmore is this year.
Yeah.
So it's this is a really down class. The guy I kind of liked was Milton Williams from Louisiana Tech, but he just blew it up at his pro day, and now it's probably going to go on day 2 just because there's no other depth on the defensive line. The kid from Ohio State had a pretty good pro day, but I mean, he's maybe a high 4th round player at best. Same with the kid from that's Tommy Togagi from Ohio State, and then Osa, I can't pronounce his last name, from UCLA, is probably another early day 3 guy.
Hizawa? I don't know, man. I know I'm butchering that.
Yeah.
The thing about the kid from Ohio State is that he's a true junior. So you've got a little more upside there in terms of age. He's only 21. And I think that's one of the things you've got to take into consideration with a handful of these guys is what their literal age is and their experience level.
Yeah. Yeah. The Ohio State kid has a really nice burst off the line. But it's like he bursts and can get into the backfield, then doesn't know what to do. So, or he can get, he's a little undersized too, so he can get locked out by double.
I would say that's like that. Very accurate. It's like he gets in there and didn't expect to get there so quick, and now he's like, "What do I do?"
Yeah.
Well, Ben, you and I were talking before we started recording about the kid from BYU who was really one of the only true nose tackles. Chris Tonga. I mean, isn't that something along the lines of what the Steelers are looking for?
He's a 5'6". I mean, maybe that's a guy they would take. I mean, honestly, he's only going to give you nose and maybe 1 and 2 tech or 3 inside. He's not a guy that you're going to play on anything but first or second down.
Yeah.
He's short and squatty and plugs a hole and is stronger than shit. Not real fast, not athletic. But man, stronger than hell and a great name.
Tonga. Yeah.
Chris Tonga.
I don't know if you guys have been watching the Young Rock TV show, but I didn't realize that those were his uncles, the Samoans, the wild Samoans from the 1980s and 90s. I didn't know. Oh yeah, those were his uncles, and I thoroughly enjoyed that show. It's very funny. So I don't know that we need to go on with defensive line much more than that. Let's jump into the edge because. Look, you've got TJ Watt. I don't even need to say anything more about him. On the other side,
I think they're going to take an edge. I just don't know where exactly.
I know. I agree with you. I think
too.
They are too, and I think they like Alex Highsmith. I think he showed last year pretty well. Once
they're not going to draft a starter. They need a player that they can work in as a third outside linebacker and. The draft pick this year may not even be the guy who is the third outside linebacker, but he's a guy they want to develop into that anyway.
But there are a number of guys. If you look, like middle of the first round, into the middle of the second round, you could make an argument for maybe eight or so guys in there, depending on where you put them.
I like Osai, but everybody seems to be turned on to him now, and he's going to go in the second round, and I don't see the Steelers taking him.
Well, I'm seeing
late first, too.
I think he might go late first. There's rumors that he's moved up that much.
Aziz Ojulari from Georgia, Kwity Paye from Michigan, Jalen Phillips
I don't like
from
Paye.
Miami. I don't like Paye. We talked about Paye a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Paye might be the best pass rusher and simultaneously the worst run defender.
He doesn't play the run. He doesn't care
at all. It doesn't.
It's like
a
wide receiver. It's like a wide receiver who refuses to block. He refuses to play the run. I swear, a running back could run past him, and he'd go, "Oh, that's a running back. I don't do anything with them."
I look, as someone who saw more of Kwity Paye in Michigan than I really wanted to. You're spot on. He's a tremendous athlete, a tremendous pass rusher, but he doesn't play the run. And part of that, too, was the defense that Michigan ran, which was essentially, let's just bring the house and leave our cornerbacks on islands all the time. But he didn't show up in a lot of games. There's a lot of film on him where it's like, okay, nice-looking athlete. Where is he? And no, he's a guy that may very well evolve into something. I don't think he's going to, but sure, maybe he is. And I mean, he's not coming to Pittsburgh.
These are the same knocks we had on Carl Lawson coming out.
Similar, yeah.
And he turned into a pretty decent player. And I think honestly, that's part of what is driving Paye.
I'd agree with that.
Up the charts, up the internet draft boards, if you will.
Yeah.
And granted, NFL teams don't care what the internet thinks, but
no,
the internet thinks that Paye is a first round guy. I think I don't want him.
No, I don't either.
So here's the one thing I'll say on edge rushers in general, and I'll get into some specifics on some guys later. But we have learned in the past, you're much better off gambling on highly athletic but minimally productive guys like a Bud Dupree was, or really, I mean, the best example is Danielle Hunter, who the Vikings took. He had
Minnesota.
1 or 2 sacks at LSU and then like exploded in the NFL because he was 20 or 21 years old when he came out and was still trying to figure out his body. So you're much better off gambling on those highly athletic but minimally productive guys from college rather than your Jarvis Joneses of the world or your Charles Harrises of the world or your Taco Charltons of the world that don't have a lot of athleticism but produced a lot in college. Edge rusher is the one position where college production means next to nothing, which is probably why Penn State's Jason Owe, who had no sacks last year, is considered a borderline first-round prospect because he just blew it up at Penn State's pro day.
Yeah, I really don't want him either.
I don't either. I mean, he's a redshirt sophomore though, so I mean that's
he's a redshirt sophomore, but he's 22.
Yeah.
He is older,
I don't know if he went an extra year in high school or what the hell the deal is, but because some of these guys do, they take an extra year and they go to like a military academy. Larry Fitzgerald did that.
He did.
So it's not necessarily a mark against them, but he's a redshirt sophomore, but he's not that in terms of age, and he was not productive, and his film is not impressive, but he blew things away.
Yeah.
Testing
the numbers. Yep.
Maybe I'll learn to, I will live to regret this, but I don't want him.
I'm not a big Owe fan either. I want to ask you guys, where do you see the kid from Tulsa, Zaven Collins? Do you see him as an inside guy or an outside guy?
That's a great question. I mean, he basically profiled a lot like Leighton Vander Esch did, coming out of Boise State from an athletic standpoint. I think you could play him either spot. I think you could play him inside or outside. I think probably arguably his best spot is a strong side backer in a 4-3 defense.
Yep.
Yeah. Ben, feel the same way?
I think he's best suited to play inside off the ball. He could play either strong side or weak side, in my opinion. But yeah, off the ball linebacker in a 4-3 is probably his best position. But, you could put him as a Mac or a Buck, really, in the Steelers defense, and he'd work. It'd be fine. I don't think he's a guy that is going to hit the ground running this year. I think it's going to take him, 8 or 12 games to find his feet.
Yeah.
And once he does, he'll be pretty productive. And I think he'll have a decent career. He's too athletic not to. And hopefully he's smart enough to pick up defenses quickly.
Yeah, well, that would certainly be to his asset or his benefit. Pitt's got 2 guys, Rashad Weaver, Patrick Jones II. Both big, 6'5", 260, 270. They're looking. Ian, what are they looking at? Like 3rd round, probably.
I'd say late 3rd if they're lucky, probably 4th. I don't know. Pitt is the weirdest program in college football that they produce a bunch of NFL caliber athletes, but they can't put anything together better than a 7 or 8 win season on the field, regardless of who the head coach is. So they're just, I don't know. They can't figure it out when they're on. They're not a team that multiplies the talents of the people around them. But then they send a bunch of guys to the pros who wind up being fairly successful.
It's true.
Middle rounds, those two guys are worth a look. The guy I really like, and the Steelers don't have a 5th round pick this year because we traded it.
Right.
We have 2 4s.
We have 2 4s though.
2 4s and 2 7s.
Yes. The guy I really like is Janarius Robinson from Florida State. And he had a really good junior season and then came back for his senior year, and it looked like he put on a lot of bulk his senior year, which might have slowed him down a little bit, but it made him stronger too. His junior year, he had a lot of speed rush. In his senior year, he had a lot more bull rush. He still had some of that burst off the line, but he didn't have, and he had the ability to convert speed to power his senior year. Whereas his junior year, he was just running around the edge. It seemed like he couldn't do that as much his senior year. I mean, this kid, I wrote a draft profile on him. He came to Florida State at like 220 something, and he's leaving at 263. So I mean, he put on 40 pounds in 10 years, and I mean, he tested very well athletically too, and he's got a good bull rush. You can probably get him at the tail end of the 4th round. I mean, I think middle of the 5th is about where he should go, but we don't have a pick there. So if you want him, you got to take him in the 4th. But I'd rather have Janarius Robinson or Ellerson Smith from Northern Iowa, one of those like highly athletic guys. I'd rather take them at the tail end of the 4th than any of the guys that are talked about as 1st or 2nd round picks, maybe with the exception of Osai from Texas, and maybe Phillips from Miami too. I mean, he looks pretty good.
So,
but yeah. All the top guys in this class have some big question marks.
They do.
And I'd rather gamble a day 3 pick on a guy with athletic upside than spend an early round pick on a guy with big question marks.
But right now you feel confident they're going to take an edge somewhere.
I think somewhere. Yeah, they need depth there.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's some small school guys that are intriguing. Cameron Sample from Tulane, Patrick Johnson from Tulane. We mentioned the kid from Northern Iowa. So just gamble on Teron Jackson from Coastal Carolina.
Yep.
But gamble on athleticism. Don't take a guy who's not an athlete but was productive. This isn't a great edge class. The top guys all have question marks. None of the top guys were super productive, but they're all pretty athletic. So I'd rather gamble on one of those guys in the middle of the draft. And don't forget, Tomlin Colbert and Carl Dunbar went to Florida State's pro day. So they were obviously doing some looking around down there. Florida State has another guy, Josh Canado, who is a redshirt junior, not very productive, tested pretty athletically, but I just don't see it on film with him. When I watched their defensive line, I saw Robinson flash a lot, and Canado just didn't do much to impress me. He had some injuries he played through and whatnot, but I'd rather have Robinson than Canado, even though most draft boards have Canado rated higher, which shocks me.
Ben, I'll ask you the same question. Do you think the Steelers are going to draft an edge somewhere in this draft?
Yeah, I'm almost certain.
Yeah.
I'll be surprised if it's early. The only way they would take an edge really early would be if the value was just too good to pass up. This is another thing I've been telling people on Twitter who argue, no, there's no way they're not taking one on the second day. They might. They will take a lot of guys in the second round because the value is just too high to pass up. Juju Smith-Schuster. Nobody thought they were going to take a wide receiver that year. They had a first round grade on him. He was still available in the second round, and they took him. Nobody saw it coming.
Nope.
If the value is there, they grab those guys. They're just like, hey, we just can't pass this up. They might take a safety there too, for all I know. I mean,
I think it was Uncle Ed Bouchette today that was talking about, referencing Juju, the fact that, just because the Steelers have wide receivers, that doesn't mean that they won't take one. And so I think that's a very, very good point.
Yeah. I mean, basically you kind of don't know what they're going to do in the second round. It really is the wild card. It's like, they've got their own board, and it's the guys they've got graded highest in the second round, regardless of position, they tend to grab. And it won't shock me if round 2 or 3, they go ahead and they take an edge. we'll see what happens, obviously, very soon. But
Yep.
I'm not going to be surprised. And
no, I don't think anybody should be.
If they don't take a running back in the first round, which, I would agree with you, all signs point to that probably being the case. Mm-hmm. But if they don't, I'll be shocked if they don't take one in the second.
Yeah.
Same here. And it just depends on who's there, obviously.
Right. I mean, you got to see how things unfold.
Yeah. If the guys they see left they don't find value in that pick, they're not going to grab a running back there either. And people will be apoplectic. And Twitter will melt down and it'll be hilarious.
Yeah. And we'll all be here for it. Hey, just a reminder, you're listening to the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast presented by Deck Roofing of South Florida, serving Broward and southern Palm Beach counties. Whether it's commercial, residential, multifamily, or condos, contact Deck Roofing today by visiting deckroofing.com. I think we all agree inside linebacker is probably something we could use. And slightly. And there are some good ones early. I think, Micah Parsons, Penn State. I'm just going to call him JOK from Notre Dame because I can't pronounce his name. I'm not going to try and offend the poor young man. Jamin Davis is climbing boards from Kentucky. Nick Bolton has kind of dropped a little bit. Baron Browning, Ohio State. Ben, is there a particular inside backer that's caught your attention at all here?
I like Zaven Collins. I don't necessarily like him in the first round, but I like his potential. I like JOK. I don't like him at 24. We've talked about this before. If you draft that kid, you trade back, or you trade up in the second and grab him that way. I like Jabril Cox.
LSU.
Yep. Derek Barnes, but he's really a day 3 guy.
I like Derek Barnes in the 4th round a lot. Yeah, I like him. That's about the top of my list. Parsons, if Parsons somehow fell to 24,
oh man,
I wouldn't be upset if the Steelers took him and did not address the offense.
Yeah,
I realized that again, Twitter would melt down. But that's a premium pick right there.
Oh, my God.
He's not going to be available at 20.
I don't think so either.
No. But Micah Parsons is the one defensive player in this draft that I would be willing to trade up for.
Really?
I think he's the only defensive player in this draft I would trade up for. Yes.
There are a lot of good corners in this draft.
There are a lot of good corners. But
we'll get to the corners soon enough, gentlemen.
But I don't know if I would trade up for any of the corners. I think Parsons, the difference between Parsons and everyone else is big enough that I'd be willing to make a move up for him.
Interesting.
I mean, I let me put it this way. I don't think I would give up. I mean, I'm not giving up a quarterback's ransom for Parsons, right? I'm not giving up a future 1st round pick. But I mean, if he gets to the mid to late teens, like Dane Brugler, the Athletic, put out a mock draft today, and Parsons went, I think, 18th to Miami. Wow. Like, if he gets past 15, that's worth a phone call at that point.
Yeah. Okay.
Ooh. I don't think he's getting that far, but man, that would be intriguing, wouldn't it?
It would be. And the only reason he possibly could fall that far is he didn't play last year.
No, that's
his
true.
Testing, his numbers were, he blew the roof off the pro day. His change of direction speed wasn't that great, but it was really solid. It was sub 7 seconds. Yeah.
I'm just looking through my list here. Didn't Jerry Olsavsky, didn't he go to TCU to see the Wallow kid, Garrett Wallow?
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah, I think he did too. And he's only about 230, but so many of these guys are in that 225, 230, 235 range nowadays. So it's really not surprising.
I think bringing Vince Williams back mitigates the need a little bit, but Vince Williams and Robert Spillane are very similar players,
right?
In that, and you want a rangier, more athletic guy to back up Devin Bush, and Marcus Allen is not it. So
no.
No. So, I mean, that's why. And I mean, we saw this year with Tampa Bay having two linebackers that could run and cover, the difference that makes. So that's why I'm saying if you can get a guy like Parsons.
Parsons would be a starter almost immediately.
Yes.
I mean, honestly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
JOK would be a guy that you brought in right away on sub packages. Yeah. But I don't know that he would necessarily be a starter right away.
Yeah.
Collins is a guy who you develop, right? I mean,
yeah.
I'd say so.
Yeah. I think Nick Bolton from Missouri is getting a little overrated. I'm seeing him going as like a day 2 in some spots. I'm like, he's a day 3 guy. I mean, he's got straight.
I think he could be a third round pick. I don't love him. I agree with you. He's not as athletic as I thought he was on tape.
Mm-hmm.
Where Cox, for example, is more athletic than I thought he was on tape.
Yeah.
But I could see him in the third round.
I guess the way I'm thinking of it is I'd rather have Derek Barnes from Purdue than Nick
I like Derek
Barnes.
Barnes.
I feel like
he's a little short, but I like him.
Our first 4th round pick is kind of the sweet spot, I feel like, for inside linebackers, like Baron Browning from Ohio State, Barnes from Purdue, Monty Rice from Georgia. I like all those guys kind of right. Cameron McGrone from Michigan, even all those guys kind of right in that spot seem to fit really well. And they've all got some athletic upside, some decent speed. I watched some Monty Rice from Georgia. He does a really good job of finding his way through traffic. Like it seems like
something to be said for that.
He's a shorter guy too. He's barely over 6 foot, but you see him kind of going through the line, then all of a sudden he's there at the running back, and you're like, how do you get through all those guys? Like he doesn't get caught in the wash. He picks his way through traffic really well, and I like that a lot about him. And I agree. Jabril Cox from LSU is really good. Chaz Surratt from North Carolina. I just want to talk about him for a minute because, I mean, this kid's a warrior. I mean, redshirt senior, but what a story. He came to North Carolina as a quarterback.
What?
Started.
Yes.
He started
He
as
was
a freshman quarterback for North Carolina.
Know that?
Yes.
Then he got beat out for quarterback. He was a backup quarterback as a sophomore. And then as a junior, he switched to linebacker and just went out there, and he had like 100+ tackles 2 straight years.
Yeah.
And he's not, I mean, he's somewhat athletic. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, but I mean, he's an absolute workhorse switching from quarterback to linebacker.
And go back and watch his film. I did not know that.
Very
basically
cerebral too.
That
very
screams.
smart
I was
kid.
just going to say that situation screams smarts. If he switched positions and ran out and made 100 tackles, that screams that he's smart.
He is. You can see it when you watch him. And I just worry he's not that big. I just worry he'd get lost in the wash a lot. But when you can make that many tackles, you're obviously doing something right.
He weighed in at 230.
Yeah. No, I
mean, James Ferrier played at 225.
Yeah. No, that's if he weighed in at 230, that's great.
So did Ryan Shazier.
I guarantee you he wasn't 230 during the season when I saw him play. But be there as it may. Guys, we've already mentioned a lot about cornerbacks, so let's just jump in because there's literally 6, 7, 8 guys that are probably going to be taken off the board in the first 2 rounds at minimum. Ben, is there one guy that you kind of alluded to this a little earlier? Would you trade up for any of these corners? If you really loved one, Surtain.
I don't see it happening.
No, I don't either.
He's not gonna make it out of the top 10.
Maybe might get the 10 at Dallas, but
I think that's.
I think Dallas is going to trade out of that pick.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk.
I think Dallas is looking for somebody to pay them a small fortune for the last quarterback available on the board, whoever that happens to be.
I agree.
Probably Justin Fields.
If Fields is there, I would pay Dallas that small fortune.
That wouldn't really bother me that much either, but I don't think the Steelers will do it. Farley, no, I wouldn't trade up for. J.C. Horn.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Do you like Farley though, despite the back injury?
Oh, I like Farley.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, basically, his medicals have all come back clean. It looks like he's going to be ready to go. It's not a problem. Yeah, I like him.
I do too.
That's me. I like Asante Samuel, but I wouldn't trade up for him.
No, but I would take Samuel at 24.
I think I might too. But I might try and trade back and take him because I look at the team needs right around the Steelers, just in front of and behind, and I don't see anybody who really needs a slot corner there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you can't find the right deal and you're trying to trade out and it doesn't work out, and Samuel's your guy, yeah, you take him there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the one Surtain and Parsons are players that I really like a lot. I don't see either one of them being available at close to 24, but
right.
We could dream.
Well, sure. That's the beauty of this. I mean,
we got David Castro at 24, so you never know.
And ask Green Bay fans if they thought Aaron Rodgers would be sitting there. So
I get everything you guys are saying. DeCastro was a guard. Guards typically tend to fall a little further than tackles and centers. I have no idea how Aaron Rodgers was overlooked until pick 24. That to me is just idiotic.
Yeah.
Green Bay just had to take him basically because they were like, look at the value here. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And nobody's taking this guy? Really? Yeah, we're going to go ahead. We're going to draft him, and we're just going to hand him a clipboard, which absolutely pissed Rodgers off, but whatever.
Hey, it's turned into a really nice gig on Jeopardy.
Hasn't it?
So, yeah. There's a couple of corners with some really good size. I mean, obviously you talked about Surtain and Farley, but, you got Campbell down at Georgia, who's about 6'2".
Tyson Campbell.
Melifonwu at Syracuse, it's like 6'3".
Campbell's not going to be available past 55, though. If they want him,
I don't. Absolutely.
I think I've said this the last few weeks on the show. Campbell's my sleeper for our first round pick. Like, I would not be shocked if we took him in the first.
Really?
I would be. I'd be pretty fucking surprised, but honestly, the meltdown on Twitter would be epic.
It's almost worth it.
It would almost be worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a big athletic dude, and
you hear that? I mean, imagine. The Steelers don't even want to win.
Oh God.
Well, okay, and here's why I'm saying that. Colbert, Tomlin, and defensive backs coach Gary Brown were all at Georgia's pro day.
In Georgia. Yep.
So you've got, and Georgia's got a lot of defensive backs. I mean, they've got Tyson Campbell. They've got Eric Stokes, who ran like a 4.2 40, which is insane. But Campbell's a much better run defender. Campbell's a really good run defender, actually.
Campbell is a Steelers kind of a DB. He really is. Yes. Although I don't see him playing on the field. I see him as an outside guy.
Oh, yeah, he's an outside guy. Absolutely. Yeah. And Campbell's tape is much better than Stokes' tape as well. Stokes has the speed, but he doesn't have the technique. Campbell's got a lot more of the technique than Stokes does. And then Georgia's got some late round guys, that DJ Daniel could be like a slot corner. Then a couple safeties that, could be interesting in as day 3 guys. The one guy who intrigues me from Georgia is Mark Webb. He was a safety essentially for them, but was kind of a jack of all trades. That they played him down in the box, they played him deep, which deep was not his good spot, but they played him at slot corner too, and he's a really physical guy. And they brought him on some blitzes and looked really well. So I mean, if you want to nab a guy in like a 6th or 7th round that could be a replacement for Mike Hilton in that slot blitzer role, Mark Webb from Georgia could definitely fit that bill. But I would not be surprised at all if Tyson Campbell was our first round pick.
We really, really have a huge need. I know that Sutton can play inside. He can play the field. If you need him to be the slot corner, he can. But he's just not that good a tackler.
Totally agree.
I would feel much better if they had a better field corner to go in there and play the nickel who can actually tackle. and it makes me nervous having Cameron Sutton line up on the inside.
Well, that's why I
just
said
my take.
Could take Asante Samuel in the first round.
Oh yeah, if you
him
did
in the
that
slot this year and move him outside next year in Joe Hayden's spot.
Well, maybe. I don't know that he'll ever be an outside guy. He's a little bit light in the seat. I don't know that he's ever going to be that guy. I mean, you see him stand next to Mike Tomlin.
Well on the outside.
His dad did okay. He was an outstanding off-cover corner. He really was. Outstanding. Yeah, I'll agree with you on that point. But
by the way,
all that athletic, all that physical corner either.
I feel old as shit that we're talking about like the kids of guys that I know.
Yeah,
played.
Asante Samuel,
Surtain, Samuel. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, it happens to the best of us, Ian. Trust me, it does.
You should know, Mark. You're 100 years old.
Oh, so. yeah. It's amazing how I've gone from like
I thought he was only 67.
67 to 74. Now I'm nearly 100. I am doing pretty damn well for that age, let me tell you.
Yeah. By the way, one other guy I wanted to mention at corner was Ambry Thomas from Michigan. He tested really well athletically. He didn't play last year, but he tested really well athletically. So there's some upside there in the mid rounds too, and then some small school guys like Robert Rochelle from Central Arkansas. There was a kid from NC Central, Brian Mills as well, Darren Hall from San Diego State. So there's some guys later in this draft too that are intriguing as well, I'll say. But the top guys are really darn good.
Yeah, no, I agree. As far as safety guys, I think we all admit that we could use some serious depth at the safety position. And there are a few guys. There's really only potentially one first rounder that I've really seen. The Moreg kid out of TCU. Everything else is you're looking at second, third round and beyond.
But they're taking the safety on day 3 if they take one. I mean,
I would agree. I think there's too many
I'm
other
almost
needs.
certain, and then they'll do it on day 2. But
the
second round really that's the wild card. That's where you just kind of go, okay, what's the good value here? That's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, if they go running back first round, then it becomes a complete toss-up. If they go something else first round, then I have to think running back is the hit pick in the second. But
probably, but who the hell knows?
Nobody knows. Yeah. Ian, you probably saw the stuff about the kid from Pitt, Paris Ford.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, he's had a tough go of it, and really, all of Pitt's pro day testing numbers were down, like in comparison to other schools. So I don't know if like the guys running the clocks at Pitt did a really shitty job or what, but it was just Pitt's pro day numbers were all bad. And Paris Ford, he's a local kid. I've kind of followed him since high school. He switched schools. He played 3 different high schools, won a state title his last year, but he's an incredible athlete. And as a hammer at safety, he's definitely not afraid to stick his nose in there and light people up. But yes, I know, Maggie.
Oh, it's Maggie's appearance.
Yeah, she makes her weekly appearance when she, wakes up. Yes. But yeah, it's unfortunate how he tested because it probably means he won't get drafted. The one thing I'll note is we mentioned Jerry Olszewski going to TCU's pro day. Terrell Austin was also there. TCU's got 2 draftable safeties. In addition to Morrig, the other guy, Adarius Washington, I think. Yeah, probably a mid-round guy. The guy who intrigues me is Divine Diablo from Virginia Tech.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm going to go take Maggie up to bed, so I'll let Ben talk about safeties now.
Good night, Ben. Maggie. Good night. Ben, I'm looking at, Ian just mentioned Ardarius Washington. Kid's only 5'8". He's like 178 pounds. Is he a potential nickel? I mean, is that what no. that's small for that.
No, he's too slow to play nickel. I mean, I wouldn't put him there anyway.
Right.
He just doesn't have the traits you want in that spot. Honestly, I wouldn't. I see him being rated in the 4th round. That's based upon college production. I don't see it. I see him more as like a 6th round guy.
Okay.
because of athletic limitation and size on top of that.
Big time size limitation.
If he were faster at that size, being a short guy with short arms, then I could see going ahead and grabbing him earlier, but he's not. I think he's going to have a pretty short career. No pun intended. I look at the guy and I'm just like, okay, you got size limitations, you got athletic limitations. Are you draftable at all? I mean, you mentioned Paris Ford before. The kid took the year off. He had a whole year to prepare for the combine, for the biggest job interview of his life.
Yep.
And he bombed it. He's not going to get drafted.
No, he'll be an undrafted free agent.
He'll get signed.
Oh, yeah. He'll take a shot at him.
Because the year before, he looked like he was going to be a star. And so they've got tape on him. They've got film. They've got a file on him. Somebody's going to sign him for sure. But I don't think he's going to get drafted. At this point, they're just going to go, yeah, we're going to sign this kid and see what he can do. And if he can compete, great. And if not, well, nothing ventured, so nothing lost. I don't see any safety getting taken in the first round this year, which
I don't either.
Is weird.
I said, the Morag kid is rated the highest of all the safeties, but I think they're lost in the cards. I just don't see it.
Well, he's a young guy. He's got some upside, and that's part of the reason that I think that he's rated as highly as he is. But I would be surprised, especially given the fact that free safety has become so important in the NFL because the passing game dominates the game now, that it surprises me that we aren't seeing a better safety class, but it just isn't a good class. It kind of is what it is. And the passing game again, and with all the spread offenses in the college game right now, you would think it would be breeding some better safeties, but it's just not the case this year. It is kind of what it is. I like Diablo, as
I do too.
Ian mentioned. I'll echo that point. He's a big safety. He is big. That kid could play linebacker.
Yeah. The kid from Florida State too. How do you say his name? Nasruddin.
Nasruddin. Yeah.
6'4", 220 safety.
Yeah. That's the way he was listed. He weighed in at 6'3" and an eighth and 6'3" and a quarter, 215. So he's not what he was listed at. He's a tall, thin guy. Not afraid to stick his nose in there, but can also play free. He's got some versatility. And it won't shock me if they took a guy like that, in the third or fourth round.
Right.
It's all going to depend upon value, but I was really kind of hoping that they would sign the kid out of West Virginia the other day, and it just didn't happen.
No, he ended. Where did he end up going? Back to Oakland. Yeah. So Ian, as we wind things down here, Ian, what if you had to pick two or three positions defensively that you would be willing to lay significant money that the Steelers will draft in 2 weeks? What two or three positions would they be?
Cornerback and edge rusher.
Corner and edge. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially with re-signing Vince Williams, you at least have 3 inside linebackers you can put on the field this year. And Tunch and Wolf often talk about, having sort of 3, the number 3 is very important on defense, to have, 3 defensive linemen that you can rotate when you go to the nickel package, right? You need 3 starting cornerbacks essentially. And in this day and age, when your nickel corner is playing 75 to 80% of your snaps, you need 3 starting cornerbacks. You need more than that.
Well, you really do.
You need a 4th, really. Yes. Having a guy like Cameron Sutton last year was a wonderful luxury to have, where he could come in a spot and he could play any of the positions in the field, especially at corner. I'm sorry to cut you off. Go on.
Yes. So to that point, though, we Tyson Alualu came back, so we have our 3 defensive linemen. Alualu can play both the nose and rotate in nickel packages. You need a 3rd outside linebacker that can rotate those spots just to give those guys breathers, every now and then. Just to take 5-10 snaps off a game. We have a third inside linebacker now. Having a fourth wouldn't be a bad idea, especially if it's an athletic guy. But I think with Vince coming back, that mitigates the need there a little bit. So I think there's a bigger need at outside linebacker than inside linebacker. Cornerback, like Ben just so eloquently put it, he's absolutely right. You need at least 4, maybe 5 corners that you can put on the field during a season. And Justin Lane hasn't shown it to me yet. James Pierre maybe has some upside, but I wouldn't trust him enough to not draft a corner.
But it looks promising, which is great.
Yeah, arrows up on him. I think.
I would trust James Pierre enough to be my 5th corner, maybe my 6th corner. But I don't know if I would trust him enough to be my 3rd corner. And I don't think we have a guy right now who can play the slot either. So, that definitely.
We agree on that point. Aside from Sutton. Sutton can play the slot, but not ideally.
Right.
And if you move Sutton to the slot, then who are you bringing in outside, Lane or Pierre? And then I don't know. It goes down really fast.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
So
I tend to think the greatest needs are
and safety.
edge.
Just to finish my point.
Okay.
Yeah, safety. You have 2. You have 1 All-Pro starter, 1 kind of, I'll say maybe league average or slightly below league average starter in Terrell Edmonds, and then nothing behind them either. So you need some safety depth too. So I would say edge and corner are my top 2. Safety would be 3rd. Inside linebacker would be 4th, and defensive line's the lowest need. Go ahead, Ben.
Ben, go ahead. If you had to lay money on 2 or 3 defensive positions being drafted in 2 weeks, what would they be?
Greatest needs are at edge and corner. But given what we just saw in the Super Bowl, where we watched the defense shut down the most dynamic offense in the NFL, and the way they did it was with 2 outstanding athletes at inside linebacker.
Yep.
It will not shock me at all if the Steelers use a premium pick on an inside linebacker. And I mean, it could be a first rounder. It could be a first round pick. It will not surprise me if in the first round they go at inside linebacker. So I'm just saying, yes, I agree with what Ian said. They need a field corner, as we talked about before, to come in and play the slot. Somebody ideally who can cover on the field, but also is a good tackler, like a Willie Gay, like a Mike Hilton. Mike Hilton was not a very good downfield cover corner, but in the short area, he was good.
Yeah.
Getting a guy like Asante Samuel would be ideal. Would not shock me if he was taken in the first round, maybe second round. It'd be fantastic. I don't know that he'll be there at 55, but I'm pretty sure he'll be there at, say, 32.
Right.
I know he'll be there at 24.
I'm with you guys.
If they traded back and got him late in the first round, it wouldn't hurt my feelings any. Edge, I see them taking an edge somewhere fairly early, but it kind of, it's like everything else. We say all this. It depends on how the draft falls. You can't just say we are going to take an outside linebacker in the 3rd round for sure. It's going to happen because we have a need. No, because it's not like ordering a pizza. You can't just get whatever you want. You can't just order up a player and say, this guy is going to fall to the 3rd round and we're going to take him here. It doesn't work like that.
Unless it was pineapple.
What?
If you ordered pineapple on the pizza, right?
No. Oh. Why the hell would you do that anyway?
Just because I like to get you off on rants.
Why would you ruin a fucking pizza with pineapple anyway? But the point is, again, you have to see the way the draft falls. And if the guys you like aren't there, the value isn't there when it's your turn to pick, you take a different position. You don't just say, yes, we're going to take an edge. And, Kevin Colbert says it every single year. You can't draft all the positions you want to draft. You can't cover all the bases you want to cover. So you go in, you have a game plan, You realize it's a fluid situation, and you do your best to cover all your bases as best you can. And sometimes things just fall where it's like, this guy is just too good to pass up. We don't really have a need here, but the value is just too high. We're taking him because the impact is going to be this.
Well, next week we will unveil our mock drafts and just give everybody an idea kind of what we're thinking. And I think we've already done that to a certain extent where we think they're going to go offensively and defensively, but we'll give you our opinions on the players specifically that we think the Steelers may be looking to draft in 2 weeks. But all I know is it can't get here soon enough. But we're going to wrap things up here on the show tonight. And, I always forget, but if you would, stop by, whether it's iTunes.
Didn't cover punters.
Oh, for God's sake.
And long snappers.
Don't even mention long snappers to me. I'll have Colin Holba nightmares for the rest of my life.
Dan Brugler in his mock draft on The Athletic has taken a punter in the 6th round. The kid from Kentucky
Kentucky.
Danny Smith.
That wouldn't hurt my feelings, to be perfectly honest.
I'll be okay with that if I feel like we've addressed the other positions well.
But I'll be okay with it if the value at the positions we still need is shitty. And so they go, well, I mean, punter is important. And the guy we have sucks.
It is. Yeah.
So,
this is true. Yeah. So anyway, there's our special teams discussion. Anyway, next week we'll be back with our mock drafts and I'm not long snapper. Anyway, for Ben and Ian, this is Steel Dad signing off on the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast presented by Deck Roofing of South Florida. And hey, go Steelers.
Ravens suck.